Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Lily Larson. I'm the Executive Director for the Blum Center for Developing Economies, which is part of the Global Learning Hub and Global Affairs. If you have any questions after this presentation, you can either send them through the chat box there, that we'll try to get to them at the end of the presentation, but you can also just send me a note. You're going to be getting my contact information at the end as well. So feel free to reach out anytime and we'll be more than glad to assist you with all the information that you need, okay? So for today, we have here the agenda for the event is I'm going to start presenting a little bit about a few programs that we have that are funded opportunities so that you can get some sort of sponsorship to implement your social impact project. And then after my presentation, we are going to have some of our fellows share with you about their experiences in one of our programs. And then we are going to have a panel with our fellows to disclose to you about their lessons learned, about their challenges, their the most important things that they encountered during their projects and so forth. So you will also be able to have access to their contact information at the end. So stay here with us because a lot of interesting things are going to happen during this 60-minute period that we are going to be here with you. So just to start now, we are going to be covering about the Blum PASS program, Poverty Alleviation Through Sustainable Solutions, the Worldwide Child Relief Foundation in Nicaragua, the big ideas, and then we are going to have our fellows share their experiences. Next slide, please. So a little bit about the Blum Center. So the Blum Center, what we do is we sponsor students for them to be able to go to different countries or even stay here in California and in the US to implement some sort of a humanitarian project. Our fellows have been to more than 50 countries around the world and in about like 6 continents. So we are really proud to see that the sponsorship that we provide to our students is really able to take the UC Davis work and knowledge from the classroom to remote areas in all these different places around the world in 6 continents. So the work that we do also has some sort of partnership with non-governmental organizations, and we like working with them because sometimes they are locally from that country, or even when they are here based in the US, they know very well that location, they have established a relationship with that community, so it's easier when our students partner with an organization, and we always encourage them to do so. Next slide, please. So the Blum Center was established in 2011, and what we do is we are really trying to challenge our students to be promoters of change making. So in a sense that they are able to translate from the classroom the knowledge, the know-how that they have from theory, and then through hands-on applications or through research, they are able to benefit these communities. What we do again, we prepare, we mentor our students. I teach a seminar during the spring quarter that's called Working Abroad, Preparing to Work Abroad. It is kind of some sessions and some lessons to enable students to develop the skill set necessary for them to go to remote areas and implement social impact projects. So our mission is really to prepare our students and mentor them to thrive in tackling these humanitarian projects in the situations that we see, whether it's related to water or education, nutrition, health, and so forth. So what we do is, in general basis, provide the mentorship and the funding necessary for our students to become these leaders and these change makers around the world. Next one, please. So besides our grants programs, we also have some events that we promote throughout the year. You see here one of the first image that you see there in my slide shows one of the events that we had last year. And we also help students encounter what the best project would be for them in order for them to develop this skill set. Again, why is that it is so important? Because the workforce as a whole values students that have been placed in this type of situation. Why is that? Because for you to be able to leave everything behind, your family, your friends, the comfort of your language, food, habit, customs, and so forth, and go to a remote area with a different group of people, with a different culture, language, and lifestyle and everything, that tells a lot about you. That shows that you want to give back. That shows that you are developing your leadership skills and your adaptability, flexibility, organization, persistence, resilience, and so forth. I have listed a few of them there to you, because that's what HR, when interviewing you, that's what it translates into when they see the line on your resume that you have volunteered in a project abroad. So this is very valuable, but much more than the benefits that it can bring you as a student and as a future professional, I would say that that is really a divisor of waters when it comes to your personal life, you as a human being. Because when, again, you place yourself in a place where you see the community needing so much more than you do, you start valuing the small things that you have on your day-to-day life here. And that really makes us better people, better human beings, people who really care, and people that when we are able, we will do anything and everything to help others that are in need. And that's what we have been seeing happening with our students. They go in a project like that and they come back passionate about pursuing professionally something like a career path that will lead them to an organization, a nonprofit, or an international organization, or continue to do something, even here in the area where they are, that will help others that are less fortunate than our students. Next one, please. So you might be thinking, how hard is it for me to be able to have my project selected for funding? So here you have the number of applications that we received in 2018 versus 2019. So we had here in 2018, 23 applications for the Blum Pass grants program. And then the following year, we had 30 applications, but yet we are able to fund about 10 to 15 students. So I would say that you have great chances of being selected as long as your proposal is a solid one, as long as it shows connection with what we do, the work that we promote, as long as it shows feasibility, and I'm not gonna be talking a little bit more about that in a second, but it's pretty much you're gonna be disputing with another proposal, let's put it this way. So unless your proposal is extremely weak, you have great chances of receiving funding from the Blum Center. Next one, please. So the scope of the programs, again, it can be either research or hands-on application, and it can be towards renewable energy or global equality, education, health, community improvement, social innovation, and so forth. Doesn't have to show any sort of like new prototype or high-tech project. No, we have funded students to go to Mexico in the past to just teach school-aged children the importance of washing hands to prevent diseases. So again, there is nothing like high tech about that, but we consider that it was important. They showed data. They showed that there were many kids there in Mexico that were just getting sick and sometimes even dying because they didn't have access to enough information. And we funded them to go and work with these kids. So again, it can be something simple like that. We just want to see the connection with the work that we do as a Blum Center and within the Global Learning Hub. Deadlines to apply for the undergrad students, in case you have siblings at UC Davis or some friends that you want to encourage applying. And by the way, they can apply under the same project that you are thinking about. And that just means more funding for you to be able to carry on your project. So you can partner with undergrad students as well. Undergrads, it's March the 15th, and grad and professional students, March the 31st. Next one, please. So a solid proposal, what do we mean by that? It has to have some sort of correlation with our mission, with poverty alleviation and improving livelihoods of a community in need. It can be here in Sacramento, in Davis, in California, or anywhere in the world. A budget that makes sense, so you need to make sure that you were doing your homework to identify the correct prices, or at least close to it. So airfare to Latin America, you need to request for less than $1,000 for that type of airfare. Because if you're presenting a request for like $2,000 or $3,000 for airfare for Latin America, we know that this is not real. So again, just make sure that your budget makes sense. Feasibility of your project. You need to show our faculty review committee that this project is feasible with the amount of money that we are allocating for you to use. Sometimes we see wonderful projects, but again, we know that that amount that they are asking for, in this case, for the PASS Blum Grants program, you can request up to 4,000. If it's a very high level, expensive project, we know that it's not feasible to be accomplished with 4,000. So make sure that you keep that in mind and you present a project that can be implemented with up to 4,000. The sustainability of this project. Again, we want to make sure that once you go to a remote area or once you stop working with them, you have put in place the tools, like for example, training the trainers, or you have done something, or you have a plan to keep on checking with the community and providing support, you know, every 2 months or every month, checking in with them to make sure that the project is not going to die once you return to the States or once you stop directly working with them. And then the replicability of this project. Again, we tend to give preference to those projects that can be easily replicable and scaled up to benefit nearby communities besides that, that community that our student is working in. Next one, please. Okay, so the first program that I want to briefly go over is the PASS, the Poverty Alleviation Through Sustainable Solutions. As I mentioned, you can do that either by traveling there, if that's something allowable by next summer. If not, you can still request the money to do that remotely here. How do you do that? By working with an organization, for example, by working with the local leaders somewhere else, or by offering projects that are going to be carried out here in California. The deadline to apply for this program is March 31st, and you have the requirements right there listed on the screen. But again, you just need to be an enrolled student at the time you apply. Even if you are about to graduate, you just need to be enrolled when you apply, okay? Even if later on you might be already graduated and then you just will be able to still expend the funds, but just make sure that you are a student when you apply. And then you need to provide blog posts, have a faculty mentor, provide a final report. For grad students, we don't require a specific amount of time there. It depends on, because we know that our grad students have, you know, usually more experience with work abroad, or they might have some sort of more commitments here that might allow for them to stay longer or shorter in a specific country. So we don't have any specifications in terms of requirement as for the duration of your program there with the community. And then again, IRB. This is something important if you're going to carry out human subject research. So if you have any questions, just touch bases with me afterwards. But this is something that you need to get IRB approval if you are carrying out a survey that's going to be considered human subject research. And then again, as I mentioned before, it can be either research or hands-on application, and you can go to this website inside the Global Learning Hub website to get more information on this program. Next one, please. The Worldwide Child Relief Foundation. So this is an organization that I really am passionate about, because they have done wonders in that community. So it's a rural community in La Calle Real. We have been partnering with them for 7 years now, and every single student returns just saying wonderful things about the program. So they are very supportive. They go to pick you up at the airport. They escort you to the community. They will find lodging for you. They will provide meals for you. You're gonna get to stay with a homestay family there. You will do some sort of job rotation program so that you are exposed to different programs, and then you'll get to choose the program that you want to spend the majority of your time with. So this is a very flexible and wonderful and well-structured program, in a sense that all of our students really had the most positive experience you can imagine, because it's a very supportive organization. So they are mainly looking for students now. Again, these are all the areas that they have ongoing projects there, and nutrition and English teaching and library and so forth. But they are in need of students that want to work with their clean water project, partnering with their partner organization, Bright Waters, and students that are passionate about community gardens, because that's what they're trying to do there, to help the residents to develop, to create a community garden and to have access to fresh produce. Next one. The Big Ideas. This is one of my favorite programs that provides up to like $20,000 in funding. So again, you might want to consider that. I will invite my colleague, Karina. She is an ambassador for this program at UC Davis. So Karina, if you can please give them an overview about the program, that would be great.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So hi, everybody. My name is Karina, and I am one of the UC Davis Innovation Ambassadors. So Big Ideas is a really awesome competition that supports early stage innovators. So let's say that you just have an idea and you're maybe not really sure where to go with it. You're like, I have this great solution that will address a really important, pressing social challenge, but maybe I'm not an innovator. Or, oh, maybe I'm not this, or I don't know where to start. Well, Big Ideas is really awesome because it provides a structure and platform necessary for you to launch your social venture. There's 2 rounds to the competition. There's the pre-proposal round, which is the one with a deadline upcoming, November 20th, 1 p.m. Don't forget that one, very important. And there's going to be a second round. So if you move past the pre-proposal round, you get to the mentorship stage. And the mentorship stage, they pair you with a mentor, and then you work on fully developing your proposals. In the beginning, all you have to do is have an idea and write about it. And then in the second stage, you have the opportunity to really run with it, get that advice from that industry expert who can really help you out there. And at the end, you have a chance to win up to $20K. It's super cool. We have different social impact different social impact categories. We have 2 new ones, pandemic response and recovery, and data and AI. I think right now is a really important time to get a lot of extra time on our hands, but also there's a lot of things happening right now. And I know that we as Davis students, right, we're very innovative. I know you guys are thinking of these solutions. So I really highly recommend you guys check out Big Ideas. It is a fabulous program. And no, actually the deadline is this year for this. So November 2020, 1 p.m. There's a few requirements. It's just a 3-page paper, pretty simple. I'm gonna drop my email in the chat so you guys can email me if you have any questions. But highly check it out. It's super awesome. And I'll give it back to Lily. Thank you.
Thank you, Karina. That was awesome. So as she mentioned, this is very simple. All you need to do is put together 3 pages right now with your idea. And you can also participate in their info sessions. And you can also schedule for an in-person, well, not in-person, one-on-one advising, just to share your idea and then get some feedback before you put together the paper. So again, you have a lot of support there and you can earn a good amount. And all of these programs that we are presenting to you today, they are not exclusive. So you can actually apply to many of them. You can have that one idea and you can apply to Big Ideas, and you can apply to PASS, and you can apply to the Worldwide Child Relief Foundation, again, with the same idea. So you don't have to keep on thinking about something new. You can use that one thing and not needing to, reinvent the wheel. You just adapt that according to the application requirements, and you might be able to end up with funding from different pots of money right there. So we encourage you to do that as well. Next slide, please. So the CARE UC Innovation Fellowship, that's another excellent program. That's a UC-wide program in partnership with this nonprofit organization called CARE. They are in different places around the world, and they provide $9,000 for each of our select fellows. And you get training, mentorship, and then you are placed in one of their site locations to work with that community. And then you are going to be exposed to the difficulties of that community. You are going to implement some sort of a solution and then bring back a report about your work during the time that you stayed with them. So usually it's about 4 to 6 months of a fellowship, and it's amazing the type of training that our students received. There is the web page right there that you're going to be able to just go to, or you can even type that through Google, CARE UC Innovation Fellowship, and that will direct you to the homepage with all of the requirements as well. But again, the deadline is in February. It's still to be defined the specific date with all this pandemic situation. And so they are just finalizing some details about how it's going to be run. But again, that was a very successful project that we had for the first time this year in 2020. Next one, please. Next slide, please. There. So here you see the world map with the presence of our students, where they have been to. So as I mentioned to you, they have been to more than 50 different countries around the globe. And many of them have worked here in California, mainly now with this situation where travel is not ideal. A lot of our students have still continuing being partnering with organizations here locally, or have continued working remotely with organizations around the world. Next one, please. So now is the most important part, because I'm pretty sure that you are more interested in hearing from other students who have gone through these experiences, to hear from them what it was like, what they did, their lessons learned, and so forth. So now I'm going to invite our graduate student, Ross Perry, and for him to explain what he did regarding his health program and project here in Sacramento. Ross, thank you.
Hi there. Thanks so much, Lily. Nice to meet you guys. It's nice to have people who can see my face. Usually I'm at the hospital these days and I have a mask on all the time. But before I was working in the hospital, I was in my first and second year of medical school, when we have time to work on extracurricular projects and activities like these. And I was working with a student-run clinic called Paul Hom Asian Clinic, where we serve the underserved population, Asian population in Sacramento. And I inherited a subcommittee to basically work on promoting diabetes education and solving the diabetes problem for our community here in Sacramento. So I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with it at the time, but I knew sort of what I didn't want to do. And that was go into this community and tell them, how they needed to change, and tell them all the things they weren't doing right, and come, from sort of an area of an ivory tower. What I wanted was to get to know my community better, find out, what sort of health barriers were they experiencing, and how could we partner, not as a practitioner who I'm, just giving you resources, and suddenly when I'm not there, you're in trouble. I wanted to help sort of create a sustainable system and group among the community members of our student-run clinic, so that they could work on their health outside of being patients, so they could work on their health as sort of human beings and family members and friends, and that we could do that with them. So we can go to the next slide. The idea that I came up with wasn't necessarily a new one, but it was first off to give some education to some of our patients. For those who don't know, I think oftentimes when we think about patients who are at risk of diabetes, we think of obese people, or some certain populations, such as Hispanics or African Americans, have often been, in the literature at least, been said to have higher rates of diabetes. Well, in Sacramento, we did some research, and it turns out about 16% of the people, at least in our underserved Asian community, were suffering from diabetes, and compare that to about 8% of the rest of Sacramento County at large. So a lot of our patients, the problems they were dealing with, we figured first off was that, one, they didn't speak the language and they couldn't get the normal sort of educational resources that other people might be able to get. Or two, they didn't have connections with each other in order to sort of create groups to help solve this problem together. So what we did is we took different practitioners, we took different patients, we contacted lots of different people, endocrinologists, dietitians, and we tried to gather everybody and start doing some specialty education clinics outside of our normal hours where we serve patients. And we, you know, there were seminars, we did exercise with them, gave them resistance bands so they could work out at home, did some Tai Chi. We tried to make it as culturally centered as possible. And then we went to the local grocery store that we knew a lot of our patients shopped at, and we found the healthiest foods we could that had the right glycemic control. We put together gift baskets for them, and we cooked a meal with them to show them, oh, here are cheap foods, you know, that are affordable to you, that are at your local grocery store, and here's how you can make them in a way that will work better for controlling your glycemic index. Another thing that we did, and this is sort of where we can go to the next slide now. Another thing that we did is we knew that education, or sorry, that exercise is such an important part of treating diabetes as a disease, but that our populations, based on the areas they lived in or based on their lack of connection with exercise groups, might be not able to, or might be experiencing barriers to exercise. So what we did is I borrowed an idea from a doctor at Kaiser called Walk with the Doc, where instead of practitioners just telling patients, you know, oh, you need to go walk more, see you later, hope you're able to do that, we decided that we would go walk with them. And we partnered with the Oak Park Farmers Market. And what we did is we said, any of our patients who are willing to show up and just walk a mile with us and talk about, you know, lifestyle changes and how these lifestyle changes can affect our health and diabetes, we'll give you a $20 food voucher to shop at the market afterward. And so by doing that, we were actually helping to re-inject some of the money from this grant back into the local economy, into another part of Sacramento that does experience socioeconomic deficits, which is the Oak Park area. So it was hugely successful. We had people from 91 years old to 14 years old walking. We had people from 3 or 4 different language groups. We had interpreters walking along with them, helping us translate between. And we met a lot of people in the market who had a great time with it as well. And I think the thing that I enjoyed the most is we started to sort of develop a relationship that was more familial, more like a friendship, trading numbers, trading emails, saying, "Ooh, how can we make this? How can we get together in the future?" It didn't feel so much like that we were on different levels anymore. And for me, that was like a great starting point, and we were really hoping to continue the project to the next level and establish walking groups in the community so that as we had new patients trickle in, we could send them to these walking groups and they would have a place to go. Unfortunately, COVID happened, and so the project is on hold for now, but we have a lot of contacts in the local community and the work has been started. And I think moving forward, this is definitely an exciting way for me to not only help treat my community members, but also feel connected with them and to have my pulse on what they want and what they need and what they expect as far as their health is concerned. So that pretty much sums it up for me. The next slide is what's next. I think as soon as COVID precautions are down and we're able to get some vaccines, we'll start walking again.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ross. I mean, that's so inspiring to see how our grad students are really taking the lead in identifying health concerns like diabetes and seeing what causes are associated with that. And I love how Ross explained that he didn't want to just get to the community and say, you guys are doing everything wrong. You don't exercise, you eat very terribly, so of course you're sick. I liked his approach of like mingling with the community and really listening to them and identifying the reasons why exercising was so difficult and then providing a solution that was sustainable and putting them together with other walking groups. I love that. So Ross, thank you so much. And we hope to hearing more and updates about your project as it moves forward. Thank you very much. And now we are going to listen to our graduate students, Shant and Tivan, and they're going to explain about their project and what they did in the Dominican Republic, about their amazing initiative there when it comes to water. So now with you guys, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. First, we would like to thank the Blum Center and the Global Learning Hub for their support in our project and for inviting us to speak with you today. My name is Tivan, and I'm here also with Shant, and we were recipients of the PASS grant last summer, and our project was on rainwater harvesting in Constanza, Dominican Republic. Next slide, please. So a little bit about my background. I'm a returned Peace Corps volunteer, and I knew that after my 2-year service there, I wanted to continue to work in international development and specifically in water and sanitation access. And so I decided to pursue an engineering degree at UC Davis, and the PASS grant was a perfect opportunity to continue to work abroad. Dr. Yunus is pictured in the left. He was our faculty advisor for the project, and he is a professor in civil and environmental engineering at UC Davis. And the picture on the right is of me and Shant at the entrance to Constanza.
Okay, yeah, hi everyone. My name's Shant Duzjan. So I came to UC Davis for a master's in environmental engineering, which I just completed this past June. And I started that program because I've always had an interest in natural resource management, including our water resources, understanding current environmental challenges for managing those resources, and also understanding how equity relates to access to resources. And that's kind of what drew me into international development work. Next slide, please. So a little bit more about the project. We partnered with a nonprofit called Puente Desarrollo Internacional, which is based in Constanza, Dominican Republic. On the map to the right, you can see where Constanza is in the DR. We were able to connect with Puente because of Tivan's time in the Peace Corps in the Dominican. And Puente is a really cool organization. They have a really simple model, but I think it's one that's really effective. They use mobile surveying to collect data and assess community needs. And when I say they collect data, they collect a whole range of data. That includes, water and energy security, education, health and safety. And they're able to do this by training community members who are doing all of the on-the-ground operation. And the map to the left is just an example of how they might use this to do some of their analytics. So, they're incorporated into a geospatial analysis and able to identify neighborhoods that might be lacking certain resources or that have expressed a need in some type. So the biggest problem that Puente identified and a large concern for them was water security, and whether that's reliable water, whether that's due to a unreliable water source or water quality can vary. So Tivan and I were able to connect with them and start talking about decentralized water systems and eventually started looking into rainwater harvesting. And at the time, Tivan was actually taking a DLAP class, a WASH class, water and sanitation hygiene, researching these systems, and was able to compile a technical report with the help of two classmates, Kahui Lim and Bryn Jensen. Next slide, please. So after researching a little bit more about these rainwater systems and receiving the PASS grant, we were able to put this project in motion. So Puente wanted to pilot a system and was able to identify a household in the Constanza area, the Durant family. So on the right is myself, Scott, who is the Puente founder and the father of that household. And we're standing in front of the rainwater harvest system that we ended up building. I'll talk a little bit more about the technical details in a moment. And on the left is actually one of the existing water sources that this community used. And you can see just like for a whole variety of reasons why this is, you know, just a huge problem, and why it is something that like no human ought to be getting their water source from. So all in all, the Durant household was chosen because the neighborhood is a good example of what water insecurity looks like. So next slide, please. So to break down the system that we designed a little bit more, on the left is the different components are numbered. I'll just walk through those really quickly. Number one is the roof. That's the part that's actually going to capture the water and run down to the gutter. It's diverted through those pipes, number two, and then eventually fills up that small basin, number three, which is called the first flush system. I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. Once the first flush is full, the water is diverted to that large black tank, number four. And then from there, the residents are able to either withdraw it right there, but it was also plumbed into the household, into the kitchen. So they're able to use water directly in the kitchen. So the first flush system was a really important part of our design. And what that's doing is it's actually capturing the initial rainwater, which is going to be the dirtiest because it's picking up constituents from the rooftop and debris. So that water it goes into that piping, which this animation on the right kind of shows how that's working. Once it's full, there's a ball inside that floats on top of the water. That's going to seal that chamber so that now any rainwater is going to be diverted to the tank, and that can be used for however needed. Next slide, please. Yeah, and then these are just a couple of pictures from the construction phase. The top right was the foundation being built. The community actually played a large part in that because Tiven and I weren't too familiar with laying cement and cinder blocks, so that was really helpful. And then, yeah, constructing the piping necessary. Next slide, please.
Yeah, and this is Valentin and his son. So after Shant and I did that pilot project, Puente actually took our manual and constructed 2 additional systems. And Valentin was one of those recipients. And I had the chance to spend some time with Valentin and learn how the project impacted his life. So before the system, Valentin's family only received water 2 times a week. And sometimes they would go a few days without water. So imagine how difficult daily life would be, and especially now during COVID, something as simple as hand washing would be very difficult. But since having the system, Valentin has not gone a single day without access to water. And in addition, water is now plumbed from that tank to his kitchen and bathroom, making daily chores much, much easier. We also paired the rainwater harvest system with a ceramic filter, which you see in the right photo. So before that filter, Valentin's family was drinking unfiltered water. And since switching over and using the filter, he's noticed a significant improvement in his family's health. Next slide, please. And so here's a schematic of how water flows through the system. And in order to evaluate the performance of the system, we're sampling and testing water at different stages. So if we sample water coming off the roof and the water coming out of the storage tank, then we can see how the first flush is performing. But the most important test is making sure the filter produces safe water to drink at the end of that chain. To conduct the test, we're using a portable microbiology lab that's put together by Dr. Metcalf at Sacramento State University. He's been a huge help in starting this water quality program. Next slide, please. But it's not Shant and I that are doing the water testing. If it was us, then when we left, how would we maintain the system? And so we're training a group of locals on basic microbiology and how to conduct a test so that they can be in charge of monitoring their own systems in their own communities. And it's an evidence-based method where community members can actually see the bacteria in their water source and then see it disappear after they treat the water. So on the left, that's Valentine, who's conducting water tests in his house. And on the right are the same results from when he tested that. And if we look at the results, on the left side is the water coming out of the tank, and the right side is water coming out of the filter. And so those red colonies with gas bubbles that you see on the tank side, those are coliform bacteria. And there's even an E. coli bacteria, which is that blue speck at the bottom. And you can see that the filter has filtered out all of that. And when Valentine saw this, he said two things to me. First, he said, wow, the filter is working great. That's the only water that I'm gonna drink for me and my family. I'm only drinking that source. And the second thing that he said was the tank is pretty dirty. And so now we're working on sort of a better maintenance plan for his system. Next slide, please. And lastly, we mentioned earlier about Puente's data collection technology, which uses an application on a smartphone, like the photo on the left, to survey community residents. And what I'm working on now is to improve their water and sanitation surveys to align better with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and specifically with Goal 6. And so having their surveys align with the indicators for the SDGs will allow us to report our Blum project outcomes to the international community. And that ends our presentation. Thank you for listening, and we're happy to answer any questions during the Q&A section.
Thank you so much, Sean and Steven. That's amazing. It's just inspiring to see what our students are doing and how they transform just theory from the classroom into something that's really applicable and that is really transforming the lives of these people. Like they shared, some people would have access to water twice a week. Now they have access to water daily. So imagine something like that. And again, I like how they connected with technology, because even in these developing countries, sometimes they might not even have, a house to live in, but most of them have access to a mobile phone. And so I liked how also Shant and Steven, they were mindful of using that mobile technology to help them, but mainly to train the locals. As you saw in the picture, they were not the ones doing the testing for the water because they wanted to ensure that the project would be sustainable. That's just amazing and very inspiring. Thank you so much, Shant. Thank you, Steven. And with that now, Karina is going to be providing the questions. So to our audience there, to you student who, were thinking about pursuing an international experience, send your question through the Q&A. We have some here already. And so Karina is going to start with our panel now. So please send your questions.
Thank you, Lily. I'm also going to quickly drop in the chat my name and email and the Big Ideas contest. I realized I sent it to just the panelists, and as wonderful as they should have the information, I would like everybody to have the information. So yeah, that was great overview of both your projects. That was really wonderful. And now the questions will kind of go into more about the process of how you found your idea through the application process, and then your experience, and then beyond. So to start with, we'll start with Steven and Shant. So when or how did you first learn about this water security problem, and how did you come up with your solution?
Sure, I can kick it off, and then Shant, you can add anything that I missed out. But it really came from my relationships with Peace Corps, and then going back to study engineering. So I had a Peace Corps friend that stayed and founded a nonprofit called Puente, and he knew I was studying engineering. So he kept seeing these water and sanitation problems in his community, but he didn't have the resources to solve them. And so he reached out to me, and that's when Sean was a fellow classmate of mine, and we decided that we'd apply for the grant and try to go down and do something about it.
Very nice.
Yeah, I can add to that as well, Karina. Sorry, I'm moving rooms here quickly because
on the move, no worries.
Yeah, you know how it goes. Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned in my presentation, I think this is why finding a good partner organization is so important, which, Puente had put years into establishing an organization that was collecting this data and then identifying solutions and empowering the community. So, Tiven and I were interns, right? And so our time there was supplementing this organization that they had already built. And that's, I thought, well, you know, what they did is really valuable. It was collecting information and then being able to make educated decisions on it. And we were just trying to help out with that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, definitely when your daily life or other activities you do, extracurriculars, you'll end up seeing things, right? And then things generate ideas. That's really awesome that you're working on such an important challenge. And I love that. Now to Ross. So you're working at the clinic when you generated your idea, I'm assuming. Can you expand more upon that? Like what particularly inspired you to come up with your idea?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I had already started working at the clinic. That's true. And then I came into this leadership position to head a subcommittee on solving the diabetes and nutrition problem for our community. And I think probably what inspired me a little bit is that this committee had been around for at least a year by the time I got into the leadership position, and nothing had been done. And I think a lot of you will find in either undergrad or even graduate school, there are plenty of positions like this that fall into your lap, where you come into some leadership position or some organization with some name or Greek letters attached to it or whatever it is, and you could slap that on your resume and hope that it helps you get to the next level, wherever that is. But that's not really going to do anything for you as a person or for anybody else. And when it really comes down to it, when you want to, as Lily was saying earlier, you know, talk about experiences that have changed you or have changed your community, without the help of like, you know, the Blum Center and being able to have a project like this, you don't really have, you're not going to really have much to show for it. So that was one of the things, is I knew I really wanted to make a change, and we didn't have the resources available. So that's one of the reasons why I applied to the Blum Center. But I also knew that there was a problem, and that was because one of my colleagues, Josh, who was a statistician before he came to medical school, went through the trouble of going through all of our medical records and collecting the prevalence of diabetes in our population. And once we saw, you know, how much higher it was than the general population in Sacramento County, you know, that kind of lit a fire under us, and knew that we needed to take some sort of action and partner with the local community to find a solution.
That's great. Yeah, definitely. When you said you wanted to create a change, that really stood out to me. I feel like as people, right, oftentimes we want to make that impact, we want to make that change, but I think students tend to not really be aware of the resources that are oftentimes available. So it's awesome that you took that step to write that grant, right? Like actually you can write this grant, you can write this proposal. Oftentimes, again, the 3 pages for big ideas and the mission overlaps, right? We have for the past grant for big ideas, as other competitions, I feel like students tend to forget. And that actually kind of leads me into more of the application process. So Ross, staying with you, how was the application process as you went through the past process of applying?
It was definitely intimidating at first. I had never really applied for a grant like this. I just kind of thought it was something that other people did, smarter people than me, people with better ideas than me. But like I said, I couldn't stand the idea of you know, heading this committee and having these people who were relying on me to do something helpful, and not do anything at all. And since we didn't have all of our funding was going to other places at the time, I knew I needed to do something. And once I started to dig into it and really start to do a literature review to back up my ideas, and to you know, I originally, honestly, with the walk with the doc thing, I thought it was my own idea. And then I started to do some research, and I found that other people had done it before and already laid a groundwork, and that was helpful. And you know, I think it's like any sort of writing or paper writing endeavor, is that it feels intimidating before you put pen to paper, but once you get going, if it really truly is your passion, it should just kind of write itself.
Yeah, totally. And so I guess turning now to Tivin or Sean, you were already working kind of with an NGO. You already had an idea of your partner who'd be working with. Did you find the application process intimidating as well, or how did you find it?
I don't think it was intimidating for us necessarily. I think it was just more of understanding, what were our objectives going to be, what was the timeline, what could we realistically and what could we feasibly do in the time frame, what did the NGO want? And then once we started kind of breaking down those sections, it wasn't too bad. Plus I had Sean to help, so that helped a lot. One other thing to add is there's great examples on the past website. So if you're not sure where to start, you can look at those first. Those are really helpful to us. And the Blum Center was super helpful along the way. So any questions that popped up, we'd shoot them an email and they'd get back to us really quick. So we appreciate that.
Awesome.
Yeah, just to second everything Tiven just said, like I think an important part for us too was initiating contact with our partner organization early. And I think you'll just, like, if you do that and you keep that communication open, you'll find, I think, that your project will start coming together, because you'll just start communicating, understanding what do they need help with, what can you provide, and then then you have to synthesize that into a document, which can be a little intimidating at first, but I think what Tiven said is a good point. Like, look at what other people have done, kind of get a good framework for the report or for the application. And yeah, I mean, once you've got the idea, putting it on paper is not too hard. So.
Right. And having that guidance as well from your NGO, and that kind of help you go, okay, so here are my constraints. Okay, here's the objectives that we need to meet. I can see how that would help things along. And there's resources on the website as well for NGO directory. So there's a lot of resources that the Blum Center offers that can help you find mentors, or also the NGOs. So shifting a little bit, I would like to hear one of the most memorable experiences that you had, like something that you learned while you were abroad. We'll stay with you, Tiven and Sean, so go ahead.
You want to kick that off, Sean?
Sure. I guess a single moment is kind of hard to identify. Or
your favorite, your top three.
Yeah. There's a lot of, we had a great time. But I think for me, I really wanted to improve my Spanish while I was there. So I actually, Tiven and I got in contact with a guy in town that was teaching English classes, and he invited us to help out for a couple sessions. And I told him that I was actually looking for a place to stay with a family if they'd be willing, so I could just kind of be surrounded by Spanish 24/7. And so he connected me with one of his students. She ended up being great. And yeah, I think just like being able to spend that, I ended up doing that for like 3 weeks and that whole time was really great, because I just got to know her better, her family a little bit better. And, it sounds a little tacky, but just sort of like immerse myself as much as possible. And I really enjoyed that. So the only reason I guess I just bring that up because, if you have the opportunity to do it, I mean, go for it, because your language skills will improve a bunch, and I personally took a lot more away from that.
Yeah, Sean's Spanish was on point at the end of the trip. But I definitely agree. I think the cultural exchange part of the experience is a huge part of the PASS grant, and I think it's often overlooked. But it was huge. So we did barbecues with the community members. We were at the Duran's family's house, building the structure with them. There was one time we started to lay the foundation kind of a little bit away from their house. And we had picked that spot and we just went with it. And we were about ready to mix the cement. And a neighbor came by and said, why are you guys pouring the foundations, the tank so far away from the house? If you put it, right up against the house, then you can plumb it inside and it work out a lot better. You can use less materials, and it was just a much better solution. And we had originally thought that it would block the pathway around the backside of their house. But they said, no, we don't go back there. It's fenced off. So this is a much better spot. And so it was just kind of one of those moments like, that was perfect timing. And we definitely don't have all the solutions. And, working with the community was really something that we took away from it.
They're definitely, like, being in an abroad situation, right? A lot of unpredictability happens. There's a lot of growth that happens, and you're just uncomfortable, and you're in a new situation. You kind of have to navigate that, right? And it's awesome that, Sean, you're able to develop your Spanish more. That's great. Being immersed, that's incredible. And I also like that, yeah, you don't know everything, and listening to the community, and that's really important. And so Ross, so since you were in the local community, how do you think that kind of changed your experience, and what was one of the most important things you've learned?
Yeah, even though I was in a local community, I think it was really the cultural immersion for me that also stood out as the most memorable. Because at Paul Hom, we serve Vietnamese community, we serve Mandarin speaking communities, we serve Japanese speaking communities, and on multiple occasions, both at our educational clinic, we had I mentioned that we cooked a meal together, but we also sat down and all ate lunch together. And there are so many barriers in our social sphere, right? Barriers, socioeconomic ones, perceived hierarchies, and I don't have necessarily evidence to back this up, but just my own philosophy is that until these barriers start to disappear, we can't really create lasting change in communities at large, right? And so seeing like an undergraduate interpreter sitting down at lunch next to an endocrinologist with multiple degrees, sitting down next to an undergrad who had helped organize the event, sitting down next to a registered dietitian, and seeing them all just chat, not necessarily about health education even, but just about what was going on in their lives, as any of us would in any normal sort of social setting, and seeing them connect emotionally was really rewarding for me. And I can't tell you why, but that more than anything else is what I wanted to get out of this project, and I'm glad that I got to see it happen.
Absolutely. Yeah. Breaking down these barriers and listening to the community that you're in, that's super important. And especially now in these COVID times, right? Like really connecting with people is really important. And we need that. Like we need that, y'all. So make sure you go vote. Side note. So before I hand it back to Lily, are there any questions from the audience that they'd like to ask? You can write them in the chat, and then we can ask our panelists.
So just to finalize, since we have the 5 last minutes, I want to go back to our speakers and ask what your advice would be from somebody who has been into this experience, into this humanitarian aid experience. What would be your advice to our students listening to you now? Tiffin.
Sure, I can kick it off. Well, first of all, I would 100% recommend the PASS program to everyone out there that's listening today. As for my advice, I would say start looking for a project that interests you today so that you're ready to apply when the March deadline comes around. And so you can look in your classes, talk to your professors. If you know that you have a country or a state, a local state that you want to work in, then look at NGOs that are doing work there and start reaching out to them. But yeah, I would 100% recommend it.
Oh, thank you, Tiffin. Shant, your advice.
Yeah, Tivin's first point, really important. I'd say, don't save this till March. And that's probably the best thing you can do for yourself. If you're interested in doing this, to help yourself prepare. And then just flexibility in every stage of this. Just be flexible. Don't have expectations. This is something that's going to constantly be developing. So you don't give yourself an image of what you think this should be. You just be flexible. For us, our project kept changing. Whether it was because of our partner organization, community preferences, even the application process, things were always changing. So be flexible and don't be afraid of that.
Excellent, good advice. Ross, your advice in the last final 2 minutes.
My advice is don't try to do it alone. Whether it's the application process, reach out to your advisors, reach out to your friends. If you have a good idea and you're passionate about it, like people are going to latch on to that and they're going to want to help you. especially if, you know, if you're a younger person. People love to help younger people. Like, it just fills them with joy to see somebody who's bright-eyed and believes in change into the community and is willing to put in the hard work to make it happen. You know, all along the way, when I wanted to do the walk with the doc, I was like, I got to get doctors. What doctor is going to want to come and spend their Sunday walking around with a bunch of people they don't know? And people were like jumping at the opportunity, and as well as other students. You know, as long as I was willing to reach out, there were people who were willing to help. It might not be the first person you reach out to, but if you keep asking, there's going to be somebody who has the same mind as you and wants to help the same people as you.
Amazing. Thank you guys for the advice and for the tips and for sharing your experience. I hope that you that joined us today for these 60 minutes, I think you probably enjoyed it as much as I did listening to our speakers here. And I would like to thank you for being part of this discussion today. We are going to drop here a quick survey. If you would be so kind to just please respond. This is my contact information, lklarson@ucdavis.edu. So feel free to email me and I will be glad to respond. And now we have here a link for a quick survey. If you would be so kind to just use the QR code there with your cell phone or go straight to the link. We are going to drop that through our QA, our chat box as well. So thank you again. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you next time. And I look forward to receiving your applications. Thank you, speakers. Thank you to Adrienne, our tech support, who you didn't see here, but who made it available as well. And thank you, each one of you who attended the presentation this afternoon. Have a great day.